right. So we're going to get started. Before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for coming. This event is sponsored by the Business Excellence Community of Practice, or BECOP. If you aren't a member of BECOP, you can go to becop.ucsd.edu to join our listserv. We hold monthly events on 3 areas. Continuous improvement. We use process improvement in the form using the methodology of Lean Six Sigma. We also focus on the area of project management and also organizational change management. So those are our 3 areas of concentration, and we'd love for you to be a part of our community. As we get started, why did we choose Lucidchart? We chose Lucidchart to the vendor to come and visit us all the way from Salt Lake City for a couple of reasons. The first is that as a campus, we're focusing on some enterprise licenses, which are licenses that are available to everyone all across campus. That includes health and scripts. We'd like to see some return on investment on those enterprise licenses, and we'd like to see more people using these tools. Why Lucidchart? Because it's a collaborative tool. You can do real-time collaboration. We don't need to worry about versioning like we do with some other tools that are available on campus. The version that's available is always the most up-to-date version. And it makes it really easy to work together. And as we know, we like tools that contribute to our culture of collaboration that we encourage here on campus. So that said, I'd like to introduce our 2 speakers. Greg Conover is an account executive for Lucidchart, and he has experience at Pearson Education Management. And Dave Palmer, who's customer success manager for Lucid for Education, and has previous experience with Sidewalk, which is a company dedicated to educational content in higher education. So with that said, I'd love to welcome our 2 guests.
Let me turn off my screensaver. There we go. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here. A couple of weeks ago, you had a presentation by Sean Monroe, and I don't know how many of you were able to be in attendance to that. I actually watched that video, and I was really excited because it was a perfect lead-in. It was a perfect lead-in for me to come out. So if you didn't have a chance to watch it, I recommend it. He talked a lot about just process mapping and why you would process map, and specifically gave some tips and tricks, and I'm going to dive really into the software, into Lucidchart, and what it is that you can do inside of Lucidchart. So hopefully this doesn't feel overwhelming. You see me in a tool that I've obviously used. Now, I've not been doing this for years and years. I've only been with Lucidchart for about a year, so I want you to know that it's something that's very easy to learn, and it's a hands-on tool. The more that you spend time in it, the better you'll get. And the nice thing about it is it really should be an easy thing for you to start working with on your own. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks as well. I'm going to give you some resources, and I'm going to hopefully get you excited about how you can use Lucidchart in your daily workflow. And so to start off with, I'm going to really try to get you inspired of how you might use Lucidchart. The main reason to use something like Lucidchart is to understand something that is complex, but to really visualize something that is complex. Greg and I went to dinner last night, and I was kind of joking about the menu. It was just all text and there was no pictures. And so my default in that scenario is I ask the waitress, what is it that you recommend? Give me 3. It's better not to ask for 1. Give me 3 things that you suggest. What would you buy on your day off if you were to come in? And that never seems to fail me. But if there were pictures, I might be able to go off my own judgment. I tend to be a very visual person, and a lot of us are that way. And so to take something that looks kind of like this, step-by-step processes, and then be able to put that into a diagram that makes it easy to digest, and it's also compelling. You look at it, and it says spend more time on me. If I see this, obviously this is easy for me for my presentation notes, but if I see that in a process, I'm probably going to gloss over it. I'm going to just kind of scan down. So that visual really does help make things easier for us. So a couple of things that we can do. One of them being, this is an AWS instance. For those that understand what that is, this is actually pretty revolutionary to be able to map that out. There are people that spend all of their time trying to create that. It has to be documented so that it can be something that people can see in the future. ERD diagrams, being able to visualize a database and how things interact, how certain keys, primary keys, connect, and being able to then show that in a way that makes it easy for us to then work with it in the future. All right, making sense of complex entities or relationships. We talked a lot about with our HR group about org charts, but really anybody can use org charts. This is something where a sales organization might take an org chart and then add data on top of it. So you can see little colored icons that will show up, and the key down here at the bottom, if someone is red, they are not meeting expectations. And so the blue color shows us meeting expectations. So there's no easier way to show this than to look really quickly, and I'm drawn to the reds. I know that those are the ones that I need to spend some time with to help increase their productivity or their performance. Okay, additionally, being able to then make additional information on top of an org chart, being able to tie that to processes, to blockers, to other things that might add more information to a specific org chart. Managing projects. This is like the scary of all scary projects. I don't want to be in charge of this project because there's a lot going on here. But for the one who is, and those who are stakeholders, to be able to clearly see the step-by-step, here we have the dates that things need to be done and who's in charge of them. What is our first step and our second step? So for those in that world, this becomes very much easier for them to control the project and make sure that everybody is on the same page. Okay, mind mapping. One of the things that Sean talked a lot about was whiteboarding, and whiteboarding is fantastic for collaboration, for getting people together and thinking about ideas, and we still use quite a bit of whiteboarding inside of Lucidchart. But one of the downfalls is that has got to be then translated into something that we can keep forever. So do we take a picture of it? Does it get lost on our phone? Really, there's one person up there, and maybe not every single person feels comfortable making suggestions. We could all be doing the same thing inside a mind map, inside of Lucidchart, where you could add information, and each person could be talking, adding, and we could work collaboratively in a way that, in the end, we have a finished product that we can continue to work with and do something more with than lose it on our cell phones after we take a picture. Now, doing our work more efficiently or faster, typically that happens by mapping out a process, finding out where our bottlenecks are, what needs to be changed, what needs to be eliminated, what is unclear. We can take these process maps and we can add information on top of them. We can link them to external sources, to external websites. We can add additional information that will make them become even more important and more helpful for getting our work done efficiently. All right, now finally, this is an ability for us to then show a before and after. So this is using something called a hotspot, which will toggle between two views. I'm actually going to start with this one. So this might be our current process, and I want to show you what our new process is going to be. So this makes it really compelling. I purposely left it drab and gray. Then I click on the new process, and you can see exactly what that's going to look like. So taking a picture, making a compelling argument, showing before and after. All right, now everything that I've just done was actually inside a giant Lucidchart document using presentation mode. So similar to a Prezi, we can create slides that will allow us to take something that's complex and zero in on specific areas. We're not trying to be necessarily a Prezi, but we're trying to make it a little bit easier for you to display something if you have a project that you're working on and you don't have a group that you want to present that to. All right. So one of the things I want to specifically talk about today would be, I know that there's a high amount of people doing Six Sigma, and there are a lot of diagrams that are created. And so we have some of those that are already inside of Lucidchart. What I want to do is make it easy for you to get access to maybe a fishbone diagram and see how you can start with a template rather than having to create something from the beginning or to go to an external website where you then print it out and you handwrite each of the pieces. So I'm going to start with this is kind of our docs page, kind of a home page, and you'll notice there's an option for templates, and we're going to go ahead and click on more templates. All right, now this is telling me that this specific template will be shared and saved in my folder. There are a lot of templates, and most likely there are a lot that maybe are not necessarily ones that you would use, but I encourage you to go through and see what's there, because you might see things that would spark your interest. For example, do you ever use a Venn diagram? Okay, that will be an easy one that we could find a template for. Now you can search for it, or you can just go through our categories and try to find a specific Venn diagram. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to search for fishbone, and we're going to try to find a fishbone diagram. And we'll notice that there's a whole bunch of options for fishbone diagrams that we could use. Okay, so again, this is there. You don't have to start from scratch. It's ready for us to click on and then add a fishbone diagram into my documents that I can now start to edit. And I can make any changes to it. I can save it. And then this actually even has some description information that shows me on the right-hand side how I might use this fishbone diagram. Okay. Okay, now a few others that we have that I know that I think that were used as I was talking beforehand. Okay, so this might be another diagram that you might be familiar with in Six Sigma. But again, get you started. Make it easier for you to begin. This one actually also has some information about how to use containers. So a lot of our templates are also tutorials. You'll be able to find one, and it'll show you exactly how you might create one in the future to make it as easy as possible. Okay. The other one, I think, value stream and then also process mapping would also be ones that you'd be able to find if you searched inside of our template library. Okay. So knowing that you have worked, you were in, well, some of you were in Sean's presentation, we're going to go ahead and create a process diagram, and I'm just going to show you as we create it some tips and tricks using inside of Lucidchart. Notice that at the bottom of my diagram there's a number of different pages. I'm going to go ahead and add an additional page, and I'm going to start off with a swim lane. I remember him mentioning that, and he also talked about some specific shapes. I'm going to show you where those actually included. Someone asked the question, does Lucidchart have those shapes? And the answer was yes. So we'll show those as well. On the left-hand side, these are different shape libraries. Okay, now there's a lot of shape libraries. We start off with just some default ones. This is some general shapes. These are our flow charts. These are the ones that Sean was talking about. He was pointing out that a rectangle equals a process and that a triangle equals a decision. And these also have some functionality attached to them. Okay. Now also at the top we have a few other just general ones, such as being able to add a note. Now if I want to add a shape but I don't necessarily see that on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and search for it. And the easiest way to do that is to click on this magnifying glass and then to type in the shape that I'm looking for. So as you recall, he mentioned swim lane, and I'm going to go ahead and search for a swim lane. This is opening up various different shape libraries that I can then select the specific shape that I want and drag that onto my canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and select this multi-lane shape and drag it onto my canvas. Now that's there attached. Notice that it allows me to select adding other lanes, or if I want to change this to be horizontal instead of vertical, I can make those changes. Okay, so let's start to drag some other shapes onto our canvas. I'm going to go ahead and drag a process. By selecting that, I'm just clicking and holding as I drag, and when I release, that is added onto my canvas. Okay, now notice that we have a couple of different things dealing with this shape. There's some rectangle or some squares and some red circles. The squares are probably what you would think they are for resizing. If I select a corner, this will allow me to resize both size and height versus just doing the height. And then each of these nodes allow me then to connect to another shape. Now there's a couple of ways we could do this. We can either drag out another shape, and I can connect onto that shape, or just by clicking on the node itself, I can drag and let go, and it will automatically select the shape library that I'm working in and say, which one do you want to add onto this shape? Okay, and so I now have some shapes that I've added. Now, as I was kind of talking about trying to make something compelling, making a change or a process that someone is going to not only look at, but want to make a change and want to follow the process. So we're going to add some variety to these shapes that we've added. And I'm going to click on the process here, and I'm going to go ahead and then select the fill color. And I can start to make some changes to color, to text. I can change whether or not the shape lines are curved or straight or elbowed. So let's go ahead and show what a curved one would look like. So that kind of follows a little bit differently. I want to grab that way. There we go. I tend to, in a swim lane like this, I kind of like the 90-degree angles. Yes, ma'am?
When you drag that line from the decision back to the process and it said yes, how did you get the yes?
Okay, great question. I'm glad that you noticed that. So because we are using a decision shape, this knows that there are most likely two outcomes, a yes or a no. And it will default to the first line I drag from the triangle, from the diamond, to actually be a yes. And the next one that I drag will be the opposite. It's going to be a no. Now, that doesn't always meet your needs. You might want to make a change. You can just double click on the text and you can put whatever you want. You can actually say, something about the decision you're going to do. So if the process is blocked, it actually now has that text in there. If I add another one, it will just default to option 1 and then option 2 and allow you to make those edits.
So is the diamond shape always a decision box and the square always a process box?
Great question. So the diamond shape is not necessarily always in the flowchart library. It does have that very specific meaning. That meaning really exists outside of Lucidchart for flow diagrams. But if I come down to my general shapes, those will just be blank. They'll be empty. Or if I use maybe a text box, that might just have text and I can add some borders. But in the flow diagram, each one of these actually does have a specific meaning. As I hover over a few of them, you can see this means that there is a data. This means there is a predefined process. And I think he mentioned a couple of these. He mentioned a connector and an off-page link. So those are specific shapes that go in with your flow diagram. Now what's going to happen is, though the rectangle or the diamond have specific meanings, you might have specific ways you want those to look. You might want those to be certain colors. You might want those to have certain types of text on the inside. Now, Sean had mentioned some specifics that he had kind of talked about, and I actually added those in a custom shape library. I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. But notice that when I drag out this shape, it has a very specific look and feel. Each of these shapes, he talked about system interaction, non-system process step, and also system automation. So you might take just a generic shape. You know it's a process, but you might have different processes. You might add some color, you might add specific text and labels, and then you can add those into a custom shape library that can be shared out with the entire group, and then everybody would have access to that. And so if you're working on a process, but we want to speak the same language, this will actually have that same language. We've made it even more specific than just a traditional rectangle. Okay. The way that we would add this custom shape library, over here it says plus shape on the left-hand side. Here are all of our different shape libraries. You can select from a whole bunch of them. I encourage you to take some time to go look through them and see what exists there. Venn diagrams, BPMN, org charts, there's quite a bit there. But at the very top, there's an option for My Shape Libraries. These are ones that I have created. By clicking on the plus, I can go ahead and create a brand new shape library. That will then allow me to make a change to the name and then also share that out. So here I've got shape library. I can change the title and I can click share, and anybody that's inside the Lucidchart, your instance of Lucidchart at UCSD would then have access to that shape library. If you are using Visio, you can import Visio shape libraries. You can import SVG files as well. So there's quite a bit more that you can do than just using the generic shapes that we have if you want to specifically customize those a little bit further. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some shortcuts that can make things a little bit easier as you're adding things onto your document. First of all, notice that this swim lane is what we call a container, meaning when I've added something onto that or into that container, it actually will stick with the shape and as I move it around, it will then stay there. I can move the individual pieces of it, but anything that's connected to it will stay with it. That can make it really easy for navigation to make sure that you have everything where you want it to be. And there's a number of containers that do that. We're all going to focus on that one right now. But if I want to make some quick copies to, let's say I create a process, and let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and scroll up here and select this shape, and I have now changed the color and the fill, and I might even change, I can change whether or not this has got curved lines, rounded edges. And I have this process. This is something I'm going to be using over and over on my page. Now, I've shown you how to go ahead and add that to your custom shape library, but in this case, I want to show how you can easily copy that over and over. I can click on Alt and hold down my mouse, and then I can just drag that shape out and add as many as I want. Now, if I select more than one, I can do the exact same thing, which will essentially allow me to, I guess I should click Alt and not Control, and I can add more. So it makes it really easy for you to begin to add. Now, another thing that I really like to use is I want to make sure colors match. I know we've got very specific color formats that we use with the university, and there's a way to do that in where you can do a color picker that will allow you to make sure you get the exact color every time. So one thing that we did at Lucid is we added a shape library which had all of our color palettes. Okay, and this is something that Aaron was talking about. So if I add this color palette onto my canvas, and I now want to make sure that this process uses a very specific color on this from this color palette, I'm going to go ahead and click on the fill color option, and then there is a color picker, which allows me to select using pixels which color I want to use. Now that's the exact color that goes with our branding, and we make sure that we always use it. So that can be another thing that can be really helpful. Pretend that you have added icons, you've added logos, you've added images. You might want to just get colors that match some of the images that you've added to your diagram. That color picker will work with anything that's on your canvas. Okay. All right, so let's talk for a minute about collaboration. So one of the powerful things about Lucidchart is being able to work together, being able to get more than one person into a doc. I tend to be one that's better in a room with 3 people than I am on my own. I feed off the energy of other people. I want to hear what they say. It helps me think a little bit better of my own thoughts and try to bounce things off each other. So when I'm working on a project with someone, this can be very helpful for me, the way that I process. I'm going to go ahead and delete a couple things off this page real quickly. Okay, so I'm going to share this with Greg. And on the right-hand side of the top menu bar, there's an orange share icon. And I've got a couple of options. First, I'm going to go ahead and click on Advanced to see all of my options. I can share this with a link, where I am going to create a link that has specific sharing permissions, and no matter who has that link, if they click on it, they will get that permission granted to them. So if I click Access Link, and then I choose between 4 options, either editing and sharing, so they can edit and share it to others, just edit, comment, or view only. So view only might be in the case of an org chart where there really isn't any commenting needed. I just want everybody to see, rather than having to pass around a physical copy of it, I want them to see exactly what the org chart looks like. So that's one way to share using an access link. That can be put into Slack or an email, however you want to send that. Typically, though, we tend to just do this through adding different people onto the doc. So I'm going to go ahead and search for Greg. Greg already has a Lucidchart application, and anybody that you have at UCSD that has Lucidchart already, you'll be able to see them. If by chance they have not already gotten their own application or gotten a license, you can put in their email, and it will send them an email and take them through the process to go ahead and get that license set up, which is pretty quick. So Greg is going to be given edit and share capabilities. It's going to send him an email. And once he's got that email, he can go ahead and click on the link. It will take him into Lucidchart, and we can then begin to work together. So what's going to happen is, just like a Google Doc, when you've got multiple people inside a Google Doc, you can see up here at the top right-hand side, there's usually an initial, and you can see that there's multiple people. So I see that Greg here is on this doc working with me. And once he clicks on a process, or the decision here. You can see that it is coordinated to what it is to his color, and I know that's where he's working. So go ahead, Greg's just going to start making some changes. He'll start tweaking this just in real time. So he's making changes to color. He might move some things around, change text, add whatever it is that he wants to do. Now, to make that even easier for us to work together, we want some communication inside the application. Okay, we're assuming that we're not in the same place together, we're in a different room. And so I'm going to go ahead and look at two options. One is on the right-hand side, we can click on the chat feature. Just like you would imagine, I can go ahead and chat back and forth with Greg. We can just converse back and forth. Now, this is not going to keep a transcript of this chat. It's like, again, like a Google Doc in that it's just going to be back and forth. If we both get off and get back onto the doc later, there's not necessarily a copy of what we spoke about. But if we want that, we will use something called comments, which is up here a little bit higher. And this is really powerful because this will allow us to direct the attention of the question to a specific shape. So I might come to this process and click on this plus option. And then if I do an @ symbol and then type in Greg's name, this is going to flag him on this comment. So we take a look at this process. Okay, so he'll get an email notifying him that there's a question here, there's a call to action, something that he needs to do. He then will go ahead and take a look at it, he can respond back, and ultimately someone will resolve this once we've taken care of what needed to be done. Now we can make general comments. If we don't select a shape, it will just be generic to the entire page, and then and that will just be more for a generalized question. Now once those have been finished or completed, we can then look at anything that is active or resolved, or the ones that I specifically have created. That makes it very easy for us to go back and forth. Those stay on the document, there's a transcript, there's a history of the work that's been going on. But what typically ends up happening is that Greg is going to make some changes, we're going to all make some changes, and we might ultimately not like the outcome. We want to go back to a different, kind of an earlier point in time. And so we have a revision history that will make that really easy. So there's a little clock icon. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. This takes a snapshot really anytime anything is changed. This will actually go back an entire year. So you don't have to worry about getting creative and then not liking the end result. You know, sometimes the fear of what if I don't like the end part, you know, and I save it, all of a sudden I've lost that revision history. This isn't going to do that. This is going to allow us even later on to go back in and go back and see an earlier version. So I can see where Greg has made changes. Okay. And so I can click just prior to Greg and I can see what that process looked like. Now I have two options here. I'm looking at the world at that moment in time for this specific document. Now it's not just the tab, it's actually the entire project. So there might be changes on any different one of these tabs. Now at this point I can either hit restore and that will be the new version of truth. It doesn't get rid of everything that happened prior. It just makes this as a new entry. I'll still be able to see if I then decide, no, I actually did like what we had before. I can just go back to that one prior and we're good to go. The other option is we might decide we want to go new from revision. I might want to create a brand new doc. The project we had 6 months ago was perfect for this other project we're doing. We still like where it ended for that project, but we want to use something we had earlier as kind of like a fork in the road and something that we could use differently. So what this would do is create a brand new document with that as the beginning point. There would be nothing prior, there'd be no history, just that version going forward, and it'd be ready for its own history. So this should make it really easy for you to start working together without fear of making changes, really just being able to work together and not have to worry about being able to access prior versions of your document. All right, so let's talk real quickly about document statuses. Now, as we work together, you might have something that's in a draft status, and so to indicate that this is not official, we haven't made any changes or made any decision for this to be our current process, we can label this as a draft. And what I used to do is I would go get like big text and I'd write draft in like this opaque kind of red lettering and I'd put it over everything so that people knew this is not like a finalized project. But in this case, what we can do is we can give this its own status. So I'm going to click on the file option and I'm going to assign a status of draft. And you'll notice that that now shows at the top of my document. Each time I open it up, it will have that status option. It will allow me to click on the drop-down menu and change that to approved or rejected or just back to no status. And that can become really easy as we're working together. Now, another thing that can be helpful is being able to add tags to a specific project for easy searching, or to be able to know when something has been updated. I want to always have the most current version of this. So if someone makes a change, I want to be notified. Or I might be the person that is trying to make sure that it is the most up to date, and I need a reminder that tells me you need to update this every Friday for the Monday meeting. So I'm going to click back in our documents page. And this is the project that we've been working on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on More. Notice that that draft option came up. I have the ability here to change the status. I can also go ahead and set a reminder. This is what I was mentioning. If I go ahead and click on this option and say, go ahead and remind me every 7 days that I need to work on this document, that's going to tell me. And then also the option to get change notifications. So now anytime that this document is changed, I'll be notified. We have a process that I send out to clients all the time. And I actually, in this case, download it as a PDF. But I want to make sure that I have the most up-to-date version if anybody makes a change. So I will get an email notifying me anytime there's a change, and I'll go and download that and then send it out. Okay. Now, I mentioned also tags. Let's talk about that real quickly. Underneath that More option, and I can click on the Manage Attributes. And you'll probably see less attributes than I have. We have a few more custom ones, but there's an option here for custom tags. So if I want to make sure that this is always labeled as BECOP, I can add in whatever I want and click Tab, and that is now a tag. And if I want to search for anything with that tag, and I click on my search option here, I can go click on Custom Tags, BECOP, and then search, and it's going to find that particular document that I was working on. As you have a lot of these, those tags can be a lifesaver to really make sure that you know exactly, you find what you're looking for quickly. Okay, so let's talk real quickly about integrations. And I'm probably not going to hit every integration that we have, but I want to just give you an idea of how you can take a process map and put it into something like a Google Doc or a PowerPoint or something like that. Now, we end up using Google Docs a lot for our agendas at Lucid, and very often we have process maps that we want to show in those agendas. But the problem is, what would normally happen is you might take a screen grab, you might download that and upload it, but now you don't have the most recent version. And you get into the meeting and you realize that's not the one I wanted to show. We're going to make it to where you can always have the most up-to-date version without having to do a lot of work. All right, so let me come to a Google Doc. And this actually already should exist. You should see this inside your Google Docs as an option underneath add-ons. Okay, so underneath add-ons, you should see Lucidchart diagrams. Now, if by chance that you don't, you can click on Get Add-ons. That's just going to take you to the Google Docs store. Lucidchart is usually one of the first 5 or so, and so it's easy to add back on. But I'm going to click on Lucidchart diagrams and insert a diagram. So what this is going to do is it's going to open up a mini version of my file folders. It's going to allow me to find the exact image that I want to embed into this Google Doc. And then I can select as well which page. Remember, there are a lot of tabs. Which tab that I want to have show up. As soon as this shows up here. Okay, so I'll go to my diagrams. I was in Demo Docs. And let's see. Let's just go ahead and find underneath Training, UCSD Training. Okay, let's go ahead and click on the BECOP presentation. Okay, now remember I had a couple of different tabs, so I'm going to go ahead and find the one that I want. Okay, so let's decide this is the diagram that I want to insert. I'll click Insert. It's going to be added to my Google Doc. If by chance you, again, we get into our staff meeting, we're ready to show this in the agenda, and you realize that's not the one that I wanted, there's always the option to come and click on Refresh, and that will go find the most up-to-date version and bring it in. If by chance, as you were in there, you had a conversation and you realize you want to make some changes on the fly, you can click on the link and that will take you into the Google Doc, into the Lucidchart doc, allow you to make those changes, and then you can come back into your docs by just clicking on this icon, take you right back to where you were. So that way you always have the most up-to-date version. The same exists if we are in Google Slides. The same thing would exist if we were in Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Word. So depending on which one that you use, you should be able to insert any diagrams and make it really easy for you to have the most up-to-date version. All right, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about presentations and how you might export those into slides. So let's go back to our diagram that we were working on. And in fact, let's actually go on a different one because I'll start with a brand new presentation. So on the right-hand side, similar to where we've been going for a few of our tools, you'll see a little presenter icon. All right, we don't have any slides existing yet, so I'm going to click on plus slide, and that will create a slide. It's kind of created a generic shape, and I'll go ahead and drag that out to the area that I want. Might make it just a little bit bigger. Okay, and that's my first slide. Now I can click on additional slides, and it'll try to match roughly what it thinks that you want. You can go ahead and make those smaller or bigger. But I now have a couple of slides that when I go to my presentation mode, I can zoom in on a specific area that I want someone to see. Okay. We can take those slides as well, and we can send those to Google Slides, where I'll be able to take every single one of the slides I've created and send it right to a brand new Google Slide document, and those will be ready to go. It is not going to be a dynamic change because this is a snapshot, so that will be one. If you make any changes, you would want to go back and change those directly. But it will make it easy for you to take this and put it into a slideshow presentation if that's the way that you choose to display. Okay. Let me talk real quickly about some resources, and then we're going to open up for some Q&A, see if anybody has any questions. So I would say probably some of the greatest things that you can have as far as for resources, one of them being Feature Find. So this right here, kind of close to the share button, this will allow me to find somewhere on the page where I'm trying to look for a certain tool. Let's pretend that I want to look for spell check. By typing that into Feature Find, it's going to direct me exactly to where I want to go on the page. I want to make it really easy for you to find what it is you need to do. This will allow us to look for certain shape libraries, allow us to look for different places where you might find a tool. Most likely, the thing you're looking for is more of a concept. How do I do something called layering? You've heard someone talk about layering, but you don't necessarily know what it is. And so you'll notice that there's an option to search on the Help Center. Our Help Center has a whole bunch of articles that give step-by-step information of how to do the thing that you're looking for. So this brings me into a tutorial with a video, with additional videos. Sometimes it's dynamic content. It might be in print. It might actually have templates. That information is there, easy for you to consume. In general, going to that Help Center, which you can also access just by clicking on Help, can be very, very helpful. Now, ultimately, one other place that can be a really great source of knowledge and information is on our YouTube page. Now, I remember in Sean's presentation, he talked a lot about kind of the art and science of creating a flow diagram. Now, we can create something that's got, it's black and white, it's got squares and lines, and it does show a process, but it's not necessarily compelling. We want to make that look a little bit more compelling. I'm not the greatest at this. This is not my forte, doing the design. I'm good at learning things and showing you how to do it, but being able to create something beautiful or something that's compelling is not necessarily something I'm great at. But we have an entire set of playlists by this lady named Libby, who has taken small tips that you would never have thought of to be able to make things look great. It's a fantastic resource. If you're like me, where if you don't see every single shape match up perfectly, it's going to kind of drive you nuts. You can select them, use a tool to automatically adjust it, right? And then that's one of the tips that she shows. She talks about the eyedropper tool. She talks about being able to use some auto layout features. So this is a fantastic resource that I think once you've gotten familiar with creating, and now you want to then take it to another level where you can make them look compelling. Someone looks at that and they want to actually pay attention. I'll tell you one of the big tips is to get rid of your white background. As soon as it has a color, all of a sudden it's like, wow, that really pops. And so some of those tips can be very helpful. So I suggest that you take a look there as well. And with that, I think we're going to open up for some questions. We've got about 15 or so minutes. I think it looks like I saw a microphone for that. So questions, it doesn't have to be exactly with what we've talked about. If there's something you've heard of and you want me to take a stab at, I'd be more than happy to do that. So,
is it possible to create a slideshow out of the history or animate the history?
That is a fantastic question. It's actually one that I've been asked before. It's not currently, it's something that it'd be a future request. It's one that I'd love to see at some point to where I can see exactly how it progresses and to see how it works. Not yet, but I think it's a fantastic suggestion. So, okay, other questions?
Is there an easy way to align and distribute shapes? So if you have like 10 boxes in a row and you just want to line them up and make them evenly spaced?
Yes, there is. Okay, so I'm actually going to select these shapes. Let's see how this works I'm not sure how this works in a container. It may not work great. Let's go ahead and try this. Let's just try it separately. All right, so we've got a couple of, that's definitely not, well, that works. So we've got a couple of shapes, and I want to try to line these up. I'm actually just clicking and dragging around to create a box to select, okay? And now I'm going to right-click, and there's an option to align. And a lot of the things we've talked about exist in a right-click. Just like most softwares, you can find everything that we're doing about 4 different ways, either in an icon or a menu or a side menu. Right-click is an option. So you can kind of see what happens, top, middle, bottom. Ultimately, that aligned everything up exactly the way I want it. So that was one. That was the alignment you mentioned. The other would be to distribute. Okay, so we've got distribute vertically or horizontally. So that ultimately put things just perfectly spaced. So you're like the person after my own heart. Drives me nuts. I want them to look great. So good question. All right, other questions? Right here.
I think you mentioned something regarding the dynamic presentation. Does that only happen within Lucidchart? And did you say it loses that functionality when it gets exported to like Google Docs or a different application?
So there's a couple of ways when we think about dynamic presentation. So one, I was trying to show how it edits dynamically. So if you've embedded something into Google Doc, you would be able to get the most up-to-date version. It would be more static. That probably would not, if I had like a link to another shape or to another website, that probably wouldn't work inside a Google Doc. But inside a PowerPoint or a slide, it actually would. So if you're actually showing that slide and you know that this shape has what we call a hotspot that links to somewhere else, if you clicked on it, it actually would still stay dynamic. So depending on what you mean when you say dynamic.
I guess like similar to Prezi where you can zoom in and out, does it lose that ability when you
Yes.
different application?
Once you move that over into a Google Doc, it no longer has that presentation piece. So it would not have that. Okay, I'll let her choose.
Sorry.
You're good.
One more. We use Confluence quite a bit, and there's been some challenges in the past getting the Lucidchart integrated with a Confluence, or we call it collab page. And I overheard in the last presentation something about an HTML solution. I don't know if you can speak to that.
So I wasn't sure exactly what he did for the HTML solution, but I'll show you as far as for embedding. This may be what he meant. So if I want to share, we've already talked about sharing, like being able to make it to where someone else is like on the doc with me at the same time. But there's also an option to embed. And so I can take that HTML and I can then put that right in wherever you want it to go. So I know that some people use things like Constant Contact, or they use MailChimp. This works for that. You'll take that HTML, you can throw it right in there. It'll work for LucidPress. If you've heard of LucidPress, it's another application you also have access to, and take whatever you've created, whatever postcard or communication, and put that right into it in an HTML format. So this can be embedded as well on your website. So that's probably what they were meaning. We do have some integrations with. Is it just a different version of Confluence that was not working with Lucidchart? Because we do have some Confluence integrations.
Yeah, perhaps it was prior to that, or people.
Okay.
But I have another question. What does activate embedded code mean?
Okay, so essentially, it really is just that. It's I click on it. Now I've got the code. It's ready for me to go. I can revoke it. So if I want to take away that access, I can deactivate it to where it actually no longer functions. So it gives you some control with inside the application. So yeah, and then there's a question in the back.
UCSD has a branding requirement. By any chance, in the UCSD library, have items been placed so we can use as a community, taking into account that branding requirement?
So I'm
like
not sure.
Template samples.
Okay. Yes.
Thank
So we've talked a lot on some of the other groups about templating, and so there's definitely a way for us to create templates, share those out with the group. If you come into your documents page and you click on more templates, there are these here at the bottom are kind of the system templates, but then at the above we have team templates. And essentially anything that's been shared with you as a group, that would be kind of your own UCSD templates. We're trying to find a way where that might be maybe even a little bit more easy to find. But so definitely templates can be created. So if you are working on, well, if the BECOP group decides here's a great template for creating a process flow, that can be created and shared out with the group, and you would always be able to find it here inside this team template. As far as for other branding, it doesn't necessarily lock you down on brand for color. Lucid Press actually will do that. If you're doing any kind of a publication, we can set that to where it will. So I guess my little Lucid Press plug, it will allow you to lock down color scheme, or the right kind of colors, the right kind of fonts, the right kind of images and logos, those sorts of things. But chart more is going to be, the templating is probably the best way to do it, or like for colors by using that color palette as a shape library that everybody has access to. But it wouldn't prevent you, I guess, from going off that color palette and doing something else. So, good question. Okay, any other questions? Still got a few minutes.
Oh, I wanted to know, does Lucidchart will integrate with our new HR system? So as people leave, as there's turnover, like the organizational charts will be automatically updated?
Yeah, that's a great question. So org charts are a brand new integration for us. We just integrated with Bamboo HR, and I think we've got 2 or 3 others on the roadmap. Anytime we come to a group and we find out what they're using, we always take that and plug it for an active user. And so we'll definitely let them know. I think it's PeopleSoft, right? That would be one that we should consider in the future. So though we don't have it yet, PeopleSoft I know is a very large application that a lot of people use. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that one on the roadmap sometime the next year or so, but nothing currently, but hopefully soon. Yeah. We didn't really talk about org charts in general. I think everybody kind of covers something with org charts, but there is a very easy way for you to import, well, I don't know how you export your org charts, but to be able to get that into an Excel spreadsheet and then to import that inside of Lucidchart and have it create that org chart. So if you have to make org charts at all, I would suggest going to the Help Center, just typing in org charts, and it's an entire tutorial of how to create that and make sure that you have one without having to be squares and text and lines. It'll make it all for you and make it look great. Other questions? All right. So the Help Center, that can be your lifeline. You know how to use the feature find, how you can find things that we've talked about. You know about the YouTube videos. I've said this before. I think process mapping is something that can become scary if you let it. But I think Sean did a great job of showing you why you should do it. Now you see that there's templates and there's ways to get there easier. Go look first and see what's created. Don't try to start from scratch. Find something that already exists that's close to what you want, and then make those changes. And then as you do that, share that with others. Share that template with other people so that they have an easy access to be able to do a process map. As you're working through, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We're more than happy to give you any help. Make sure that we send you to the right places and get you the right resources.
Just before we end, Lucidchart is available to all the faculty and staff members. So if you go on Blink, to search for Lucidchart, and they'll have instructions on how to access the software solution. Thank you, Dave and Greg, for providing this special session just for the BECOP community. I'm looking forward to using it. I haven't got a chance to dabble in it yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic.
We also have some giveaways. So if you haven't signed in yet, can you raise your hand, unless you don't want to be part of the the raffle?
Greg, you're ineligible.
So we are giving away we have 3 drawings for this book by Shola Richards, which is Go Together. Shola Richards is actually going to be here next week to give a presentation to campus. So I don't know if there's still seats available, but if you want information about that event, just contact me. My email is gta@ucsd.edu if you're interested. And then I'm just going to do a random number generator to make it a little easier. Let's see. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add? Okay. You're the last one? Is that it? Okay, so the first winner is Kevin Waldrop from EBC. What's BO? EBC, your department?
EBC BO.
Yeah, what's BO stand for?
Business office.
Business office? Okay. Let's see. Next winner. Jackie Holmes from Enrollment Management. Is she here? Oh, I think she left. Let's see. Is it Valeria? Valeria? Yes. From, looks like.
Repository of Digital Technology.
Yes. Thank you. And our last one is Elliot Kiefer from Student Financial Solutions. All right. If you guys don't have any other questions, thank you for attending. If you're not a BECOP member, consider being one to get access resources like this and training sessions. Thank you.